After watching the film, what did you kind of learn about that tech game?
Um, Probably the worst defensive performance we've had, maybe in my time here. And we've always been good, and I'm sure there's been some games where we haven't been good. I never felt like we had no answers. And all the analytic data we get afterwards tells us that outside after the first, I want to say maybe 7 minutes, we're up 2011. We just kind of, and again, some of it's immaturity and lack of ability to stay focused for a sustained period of time. But yeah, they just, after a while, they responded. We kind of punched first, they hit us back, and we never responded. So, gotta keep showing up and doing the work, but understand, I think that's a part of the game on the road, in particular, everywhere. And the place we're going is going to be more difficult. And so we just got to understand that the sense of urgency you got to have for every possession. One of the more disappointing things is that we kind of had Pop Isaacs fairly bottled up there early, and he gets his first made basket on something that's very controllable, a free throw block out. And a kid like that doesn't need help with confidence. If he was 0 for 12 at that point and shot one with 2 guys on him, he would have felt like it was going in. But to get one that easy to really break the ice for him, kind of got the ball rolling for him.
Defense, was it effort based? Was it schematically they were breaking you guys down?
I don't think it was effort. I think it was more communication. They like a lot of teams, they run a lot of pick and roll, but they do it a little bit different. They set a lot of them with their guards. In fact, the first possession after the 2011 timeout, they got downhill on us on a guard screen, and I think Vaughn was guarding the ball, and Hicks' man set it. He was guarding Walton, I think, and Vaughn was guarding Toussaint. And that's just a simple switch. We do that every day. We guard it in every game. And you got to be sharp. We weren't sharp. So it wasn't effort. It's just lack of ability to be sharp and really, really locked in on just executing those small details.
I think the 2011 run that you guys started on, I think that kind of started going downhill whenever you went to your bench. We kind of talked about this in the past. Was it bench related, or is that kind of coincidence the other night? Or
after watching it, we did go on a scoring drought. It's not like they went bang, bang, bang. We actually were getting stops for a little bit of time there, but there's certainly an element of losing, particularly when Vaughn came out, the ability to kind of just create easier shots for guys. So I thought the ball stuck more than it had been recently, and evidence of, I think we finished the game with 5 assists. And that tells you a lot there. And they only finished the game with 4 turnovers. So both ways, we held the ball and didn't move it, which is something we've gotten a lot better at this year than we have in years past. And then our defense didn't put a whole lot of pressure on them, causing them any, I think they had 17 assists and only 4 turnovers for the game. So they were just flat out better than us for 30 minutes of the game. And got to learn from it. Like I said, it doesn't get any easier. One thing I do feel good about is they showed back up today because we were off yesterday. With a sense of pride and responded well in practice. But you got to do it in the game. You got to do it for the whole game to win in this conference.
You want a trip to Hilton? What have you thought about the way that Iowa State started? They obviously got a big win this week.
When you talk about being a top 5 defense, you're really talking about probably very minor details and being 3 versus 1, right? So one of the best defenses in the country. They force a lot of turnovers, and that's how they ignite their offense. And obviously they won a bit of a rock fight the other day against another team who I think was number 1 in the defense coming in against Houston. So anytime you can win a game of toughness against Houston, it tells you a lot about who you are. We'll have to play a lot better than we did the other day, no question, to even have a chance. But there's also the fact of these guys just have to continue to grow and get better. We got to play with more consistency. And I said this after the game last Saturday. I mean, I don't think Garrison is going to be a 20-8 guy every game, but need to count on 10 to 12, right? You can't go from 20 to 4 and have that kind of up and down. Just got to find some consistency with them, but understanding that your opponents watch the games too, And he played against a 25-year-old guy who's been in college for 6 years, who was waiting on him. And if he didn't know much about Brandon Garrison before Saturday, he certainly knew about him before he got to Lubbock on Monday night. Well, I guess we didn't go there till Tuesday afternoon. So this is part of the process of getting young guys to play consistently well, is understanding that every day of prep, after a good game, after a bad game, is got to focus on the moment.
And so what goes into helping someone like Brandon kind of stabilize there? Is it more of like a mental focus? Is it kind of like just making sure you have everything to where it's second nature and you're not having to think in the moment?
You just have to live this thing enough, man. Like, I think it's one of the things that's it's hardest to really get people to understand. Like, you cannot replicate what he went through between Saturday, let's just say after the game, right? When I'm sure for the following 24 hours, everybody was telling him he was Hakeem Olajuwon. When the fact of the matter is, we really didn't throw the ball. And like we used to do that with Boone. Like, we throw the ball and he'd do the footwork stuff. Like, BG didn't score like that, It was running the floor, rebounding, things that are very controllable. But those younger guys tend to ride the waves of that, the adulation, right? The celebration, and have a harder time bringing themselves back down to the process that got them there. And that's our job as a staff, but it's also something you just have to live through and learn what it takes for you to get back Sunday, by the time practice is getting ready to happen, to have forgotten about the game. I say it all the time. You can't think about what's coming. You can't think about what happened. You got to focus on right now, and that's the only way to get through this league.
Now, I know someone like Cade Cunningham, obviously a very different story, but in your experience, has there kind of been like a set benchmark of games typically that you need to see from a freshman before you see them start to get comfortable, start to kind of get settled in?
Yeah, you usually see it towards the middle, the end of January, if a guy's played enough, right? Enough plays, enough mistakes, enough, I'll say this out loud because it'll happen Saturday the moment I say it, but he hasn't been in foul trouble as much, right? Early on, you don't know, like, how they call fouls in college, like, what's a moving screen, what do they call on rebounding, how aggressive can you be, backing somebody down. So it takes some time to adjust even to that part of the game, which, again, people can't factor that in, But even Cade, he had times where he struggled. One of my great frustrations at this point as a head coach is having never won in Fort Worth, and we had the ball in a tie game in his hands with no time on the clock, no shot clock, right? And he went early. That was in February, I think. So even the greatest of them, right, have those moments where youth just kind of owns them, and they don't have the ability to figure out how to. One of the smartest kids I've ever coached just got caught. And if I can go back for you guys to explain how it happened, we were up one, and I believe they missed the first free throw.
You're talking about the game in Fort Worth?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true. I remember
And
watching that
then
game.
they made the second one to tie the game. And I think he just assumed they made both. So I don't think he was maybe paying attention to the first shot. So he gets the ball, and obviously I'm just gonna, not the best player in the country. I'm not gonna call a timeout to give him the ball back. They give him a chance to deny him, just let it play out. It's a tie game. And he went early, and not only did we not score, but then I think because he thought we were down, he chased after the guy who got the rebound. They got a run out, and they scored to win the game in regulation. So my point being is, that could happen to him. As smart as he is, understanding of the moment as he was in most games. Like, he still had moments where it wasn't there. So for me not to expect Daly and Garrison and Connor and Keller and Justin to go through the same thing, I'd be kidding myself.
You still talk to Cade very often?
Yeah, those conversations aren't fun the last couple months, to be honest.
It's been a rough year for them.
He's a sore loser.
He
very good.
It's not, when you look at his stat lines and what he's been doing, it's gotta be pretty frustrating
Pretty
for him.
competitive guy, not a stat chaser. always valued winning above all else. He was convinced they were going to be a playoff team his rookie year, and I told him, "You're out of your mind. This is a different world you're walking into." But yeah, we talk. You know, I encourage him. You know, just like all the guys who are still playing. You know, I talk to Lindy quite often. Obviously, he's here. Cam's with the Memphis Hustle, G League. Got some guys overseas. So yeah, I try to keep in touch with as many of them as possible.
I hadn't heard about Lipsy a ton going into last year. It seems like he's really taken a step, even going into this year, that he maybe didn't have last year. What do you thought of his game?
That's kind of the beauty of all this stuff, man. I think and I got a son who's getting there that we'll figure out if he's any good at all. But my hope is he's an under the radar guy because it allows them to grow organically. And we've talked about this with like Bryce or some of the other highly touted recruits we've had come in here. Like the expectations are completely out of whack for most of them. Like you can't be a good pro until you learn how to play at this level. And to learn to play at this level, you got to have some humility and not believe that you got one foot out the door already. So what happened, I don't know if you know this, so he came in there last year and they expected to redshirt him. They had a fairly older team and they had a point guard who got hurt at the beginning of the year. I think the kid had transferred in from Temple or something like that. So he ends up just kind of falling into an opportunity, but no one really expected much from him. Just kind of managed the game and he accepted that. He really put time in this summer to make himself more valuable. And he shoots the ball really well now. He leads their team in rebounding. Mm-hmm. For about 6 games, he was leading them in offensive rebounding, which is super unique for a point guard. But I think one of the things that helped him is he didn't have people telling him, he needs to be looking at the mock draft every 6 hours and refreshing to see if he's. Some of these guys come into college and they play like the draft is after the game that they're playing in. Like when the game is over, like Adam Silver's going to the podium, he's going to announce picks. You just can't do that.
With him being a point guard, is that Javon's assignment? Do you want Q on him?
We'll probably start Q on him. A little bit more size. It's tend to be something that has affected his ability to see in the past. But we switch a lot, so he'll be switched off of probably on the Vaughn, on the BT some. Just kind of see how it goes.
They've got, I think, 4 or 5 guys in double figures right now. How difficult does that make it to where you're not focusing on one guy, but any guy can go off on a given night?
Yeah, I mean that's what makes some of the best teams most challenging to prepare for is that you can conceivably shut down their leading scorer and another guy can make up the difference pretty easily. So TJ's done a great job just getting old and staying old. I mean, I think Robert Jones has been here as long as I've been coaching. It feels like I think he played against Mitchell Solomon my first year, and Trey King's a 5th-year guy. They're really really good, but they're physical, they're tough. And again, I think kind of go back to the question I'm off topic here, but like Omaha Blue, right, the highest rated recruit in the history of their program. Program that's got probably the guy who's going to be in the MVP discussion in the NBA right now, Monte Morris, who was 6.5 assists to 1 turnover in his career. Like he's having a hard time even getting on the floor because they struck the right balance and having veteran guys who can help him kind of lower his expectations. And, he's a great kid. Got a chance. He was on the USA 19 team. So it's just what happens, man. I think the more we can just accept that, the less frustrating that fans would be.
We've talked about a lot of close calls, I guess, in recruiting. It seemed like you guys were pretty close on Omaha. Was that the actual case going down the stretch?
I don't know, man. Being second is the same as being 200th in recruiting. It's a literal zero-sum game, man. Like you either get them or you don't. And sometimes it's actually less beneficial to be second than it is to be out early because you spend more time, chasing down. Maybe you miss out on somebody else you could have gotten. So I don't really know. I try not to get caught up in that. We obviously there's been some guys we have been really, really close on that I was pretty adamant. I don't know how close we were there. We had a relationship. I still have a lot of respect for who he is as a person. I think TJ's doing a great job with developing him, and he's going to be a really good player for him at some point.
It was sort of out of necessity, but you went with the 4-guard lineup late in Lubbock. Were there things about that you liked? Were there things about that you didn't like? What were your kind of thoughts on it?
There were a lot of things I liked. They had to adjust how they guarded us. I mean, you always want to try to make teams adjust to you. much as you adjust to them. I think obviously what it does is it gives us more for Javon and Bryce just driving lanes. And it was the first time that John Michael and Hick both played well at the same time. We even got a 3 from Connor there. So, that was probably one of the things that I was banging my head against is like I've been trying to find a game where my shooters all made shots. And we got 23 points, I think, out of the 3 of those guys, Connor, John Michael, and Jarius. And to give up 90, I mean, made it hard. But, yeah, I liked it. We'll see how much we can use it. They played a pretty big team themselves, but it may be something that we can revisit down the road.
When you do want to go 4 guard, is Brandon kind of the perfect center for that with his ability to run up and down the floor and protect the paint?
Yeah, particularly with smaller guards. Like, you couldn't really do that if we were playing Justin as a 5 or a Daly, because then you're small even there, right? You need to have some size, some ability to set good screens, to get guys loose and pick and rolls, to rebound, to maybe protect the rim if some of those smaller guys get beat off the dribble. So yeah, in many ways, he's the ideal 5-man with that group.
2 games from now, but is there anything that UCF did against Kansas that you think you could replicate?
I haven't studied the game, so I couldn't say. I just kind of glimpsed through the box score. Seemed that Kansas struggled shooting, didn't get to the free throw line a ton, which is usually not the case. But I haven't really watched the game to be able to tell you. Maybe, like I said, maybe when I talk to you guys before then, but hopefully I got a plan for them by the time Tuesday gets here. Right now, all of my attention is on trying to figure out how to win at 15 below temperatures outside and about 12 inches of snow on the ground.
I want to circle back. Something you said at the very beginning where you said you got your analytics from the defense. Do you have a guy that feeds you that, or do you just
So we actually use 2 companies. One's called HDI, and another one's called Shot Quality. One's more offensive shot selection based. The other one's both offense and defense, just where you want to try to force teams to play at, right, inside the 3-point line, but not at the rim. How well they rebound, how often they try to run, how much turnovers they force. So yeah, we use a couple different data analytics companies to help us.
How much of an influence does that have on day-to-day stuff?
Man, I'm becoming more and more obsessed with it. It still doesn't drive every decision I make. There's still an element of my experience having played in the game. I always tell the story. Really, the first time we started using it was on just the minutes guys would play, like the load when load management became a deal. In the year we had K, we thought about how we're gonna have this dude 1 year, right? He's not gonna spend a whole lot of time on the bench. But strategically, how could we rest him to get through the season or whatever? And I'll never forget, one of our points was we always try to get him out either at the 12-minute, close to the 8-minute or 12-minute media of the first and the second half. And the second half was always depending on how the game's going. And we're in Norman, in a pretty famous game now, and it gets to about the 12-minute media. And if you can remember, that year was COVID, so the benches are years apart. So Barry Henson was on my staff, and he was one of the guys furthest away from me. And he comes up to me, about the 12.5-minute mark and says, "Hey, just letting you know, Kate hasn't been out this half." And it was the one time I looked at him and said, "The numbers don't matter today." And he rewarded us in kind. So yeah, the numbers are good, but you can be paralyzed by them to a certain degree. Also, there's an element of feel you got to have for the game, and you got to know your people. And obviously, you don't get to come in here and say the numbers lost the game for you. You got to make the decision.
This might happen every year, but it seems like this year in particular, there's a lot more upsets going down right now. I think it was a really bad night last night to be a road team or a ranked team on the road. Is there something going into that? Is this all coincidental?
No, there's no coincidence, Mark. This has been trending this way, I think, and I don't have the data on this, but I certainly will get somebody to look at it over the last 4 or 5 years as the transfer thing has become more prevalent. The talent's more distributed evenly, and part of what's happening is teams are taking longer to get to know each other because you're not dealing with guys who've played together for 3 or 4 years. It's just not happening anymore. In fact, when Washington played it, I think this is his 4th school.
Mm-hmm.
Trey Mitchell is on his 4th school. Joe Toussaint's on his 3rd school. There's I don't know the percentage, but I would guess 25 to 30% of rosters have at least 7 brand new guys, many of which like played last year for a different team. So I think that's a part of it is, you know, the season's gonna always be a little bit choppier. You're gonna be able to have less assurity that this team going to play at this place is gonna win. You know, there's still gonna always be outliers. It's still gonna always be tough to play in places in our league like Allen Fieldhouse and Hilton Coliseum and next year McHale Center in Arizona. Like those historically have been great home courts, but other than that, I mean, especially on the road, I don't think upsets are really a thing anymore.
Does that make it then, ideally, do you want to keep a team together longer, or do you just jump into the everybody's got a new team every year game? Is there a fine balance, or can you even
it's hard.
go long
I don't
term?
know how realistic it is to keep a team together for, let's just say 3 years even. You know, I think I said it at the end of last year. You know, the Avery Anderson recruiting class with Boone and Harris and playing 4 years ago. Now they're all playing college basketball, so we're even still, right, because of the extra year. But that's going to not happen that often anymore. It's a kind of a sad thing, especially for fans. I think that's what makes college, what has made college athletics unique, is that fans come in and they watch a kid as a freshman, and then, you know, they're not sure like what the coaches saw in this kid, and then by the time they're seeing it, like, okay, we like that guy, you know? Like, I mean, we always liked him as a person, but, oh, he can really play. Like, and that's just going to be a different process. And now, you know, there's real talk that the second-time transfer, which has already kind of been opened up, is going to be just completely permissible. So what's going to stop it from being a third-year transfer, a third-time transfer? And the more options kids have, the more they want to explore. The kids are curious, man. Like, sometimes it's for no reason. Like, just want to go see what it's like in the portal.
And you get that element too of the families telling them to, hey, go,
Of course.
go check it out.
Absolutely. Guys, I'm telling you, man, this is kind of the nasty underbelly of college athletics. There are transfer lists all over the place in college basketball already. I mean, I'm talking at every level of team. Teams that are really winning at a high level, teams that are losing, and all in between. Like,
How hard does that make it for the smaller schools, you know, when you are able to hit on a big recruit that maybe goes under the radar just to lose him 2 years later to a different school, you know, to stay relevant and to keep finding those guys who can help you win?
yeah, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but I think it's a more an accepted reality at this point for those coaches. I hope I'm not, you know, disparaging anything. I just think that there's been acceptance that, you know, if you get a kid and he's a freshman of the year in Summit, there's some Pac-12, Big 10, Big 12 schools going to be poaching at them. And if you got a really good player in the Metro Atlantic, the Big East, and Atlantic 10, like, so maybe for them, it's been an opportunity to just kind of readjust how they approach recruiting. And they're not as worried about maybe taking a lesser talent kid. Just take a kid who may want to go play in the Big East and tell them, hey, instead of going to Villanova, come to St. Peter's. We'll play you 35 minutes a game as a freshman. And then if you want to leave, I know the guy over there. I'll call him for you. I mean,
It's almost like a junior college type of mentality now.
unfortunately.
How curious would you have been if these opportunities were available when you were a player?
I don't know. Loyalty is a really, really big thing for me, but I don't want to be like the old man saying in my day. I mean, you know, I contemplated transferring after my freshman year because my coach retired. It was a pretty short conversation because I realized I didn't want to sit. I didn't want to not play at all, and that was the rule. You had to sit out. But I was a long way from home. I didn't have a great freshman year, so it was a natural thing. I was glad, though, and I'm more glad looking back, that there was something that made me stop and think about if that was the best thing for me, or was I just trying to get away from something? Was I really running to something better, or was I just trying to get away from something that I couldn't own, not being as good as I thought I was coming in with, you know? And the best thing that ever happened is I stayed there and I got to know my new coaches, and it didn't go great initially, but I became a good player and I developed relationships through it. Some of my best friends in the world still live in Columbia, still close to both of the coaches I played for, my teammates, and like those things are missing now in